Hello and welcome. Tonight, I invite you to slow down, to release the thoughts of the day, and to simply be here. You've arrived at a soft place, a quiet place, a space where the world can wait and your only task is to rest. So find your most comfortable position. Let your body melt into the mattress. Close your eyes gently and take a deep, slow breath. Tonight's story is called The Whispering Willow. This story is slow, like a soft breeze on a warm evening. There are no loud moments, no rush. Only the calming rhythm of a story meant to lull you into a deep and peaceful sleep. So let go now. Let your breath guide you. Let the world fall away behind you, and allow the whispers of the willow to carry you gently into rest and into dreams. Let's begin. There is a village so quiet that it feels like a secret whispered by the hills. They call it Willowmere, a name that lingers on the tongue like the last note of a lullaby. Cradled between velvet green slopes and wrapped in the arms of a silvery lake, the village rests beneath a soft sky where clouds drift slowly, as if they, too, have nowhere urgent to be. In spring, the cherry trees bloom like clockwork, painting every cobbled lane and thatched rooftop in shades of pale pink. Blossoms fall like sleepy snowflakes, gently drifting through the air before landing in curls on windowsills and garden stones. Birds with round bellies sing only in soft tones here, as if afraid to disturb the dreamlike hush that settles over Willowmere. Like a warm, woven blanket, the village awakens not with alarm bells or the clatter of shoes, but with the stretching of wooden shutters, the yawning of tea kettles, and the whisper of brooms sweeping petals from stoops. It is a place where time doesn't march. It meanders. There is no rush, only rhythm. At the edge of the village square stands the oldest and tallest resident of them all. A great willow tree with arms so wide it seems to embrace the entire world. Its tendrils hang like soft curtains, swaying in a breeze that never quite stops. The villagers say the tree hums if you sit quietly enough. They believe that dreams caught in its branches return softer, lighter, and easier to carry. And beneath that willow, every evening as the sky turns to velvet, and the stars blink their first sleepy eyes, sits Lena. She is not old, but something in her feels ancient, like the earth, or the moon, or the first cup of tea ever made. Her hands are always warm, and faintly smell of lavender and rosemary. She wears layers of soft fabric, all in shades of fog, dew, and faded sky. And her eyes, gentle gray eyes, seem to see everything without ever intruding. Lena is Willowmere's herbalist. Yes, but more than that, she is its comfort. When little ones cannot sleep, she is the one who sings to them. When the elderly feel the ache of memories long past, she makes them tea and listens as they talk into the hush of evening. And when dreams feel too loud, too tangled, or too heavy. Lena tells stories beneath the willow, and the dreams untie themselves like ribbons in the wind. But lately, things have felt different. It is subtle, the way the wind becomes still, or how a hush seems to last too long. Some villagers wake with furrowed brows, saying they don't remember sleeping. Others mention strange dreams, floating ones, wandering ones, dreams that feel as if they have forgotten the way home. The baker's daughter says she dreamed of climbing a staircase that never ended, while the postman claims he heard his name whispered by the lake. Even the animals seem quieter and more watchful. The swans on the lake no longer glide in their usual elegant pairs, and a cat that once purred like a drum now sleeps with its ears pricked. Lena, who walks barefoot on the grass most mornings, notices that the earth beneath her feet feels not wrong, but slightly out of rhythm. It's like a song playing in the right key, but at the wrong tempo. She hasn't said anything to the others yet. Not just yet. Sometimes the world holds its breath before a shift, and Lena knows better than to speak over it. So she watches, listens, and waits. That evening, as lanterns flicker to life in cottage windows and petals drift silently to the ground, Lena gathers her shawl and her small woven basket of herbs. She walks to the willow as she always does, her steps unhurried, as though in step with the heartbeat of the village. She sits, her back against the wide trunk of the tree, the basket beside her, and closes her eyes. The wind passes through the hanging branches, like fingers over harp strings. A single blossom lands in her lap, and the village, beneath the blossoms and the stars just beginning to wake, exhales softly. For now, all is still, but not silent. The next morning arrived not with fanfare, but with mist. Soft, milky fog drifted through Willowmere like a quiet thought, curling gently around doorways and slipping between tree trunks. The sun didn't so much rise as unveil itself, brushing the village in a golden light that felt half asleep. Lena stood by her window, holding a steaming mug of thyme and honey tea. She watched the mist roll slowly past her herb garden, cloaking the rosemary bushes and turning the lavender into pale silhouettes. It was the sort of morning that called for stillness, the kind where the world felt paused, as though waiting for something to be heard. She took a slow sip and let the silence settle on her shoulders like a shawl. Then, as always, she walked. Her bare feet touched the dew-soaked grass, and the earth welcomed her like an old friend. She wandered the quiet paths circling the village, picking a few chamomile blossoms here, a stalk of mint there, her fingers moving without thought. The village yawned around her. Wooden doors creaked open. Roosters cleared their throats in the distance, and the sound of bread dough being kneaded thumped softly from the bakery. But even as life resumed, Something in the rhythm felt off. The wind, for one, was restless. It didn't blow hard or fast. No, it moved like someone slowly pacing in thought, changing direction without warning, carrying whispers that didn't seem to belong. It brushed the back of her neck and tugged lightly at the hem of her skirt, as if it wanted to speak but hadn't yet found the words. By mid-morning, Lena found herself once again beneath the willow. Its presence, always soothing, now felt quietly watchful. The tree's long, curtain-like branches swayed even when the surrounding wind was still, and its bark, usually warm and dry, felt cool under her fingertips like a river stone. She sat at its base, as she had so many times before, but instead of brewing tea or telling stories, she simply listened. The wind moved through the branches above like breath, long, slow, and uneven. A sudden hush fell, and in that silence, Lena heard it. Not a sound exactly, not a word, but a feeling. Notice me. It wasn't spoken aloud. It rose from the willow like a sigh from an old soul, neither urgent nor loud, just present. She closed her eyes and placed her hand flat against the trunk. For a moment, her thoughts quieted completely, and in their place came images, faint and fleeting, like dreams just before waking. She saw ripples moving backward across the lake. She saw petals falling upward into the sky. She saw a room full of sleeping people with their eyes wide open. Then, just like that, they were gone. The images faded, leaving her heart beating a little slower than before, as if her body had matched the tree's pulse. She didn't feel fear. She felt an invitation. The willow was trying to show her something, or remind her of something forgotten. As the sun rose higher and the village stirred more fully to life, Lena remained beneath the tree. She pulled out her small, cloth-bound notebook and began to write. Not facts or lists or remedies, but fragments. A feather that doesn't fall. A dream that floats but never lands. The sound of footsteps with no echo. Each line felt like a puzzle piece, one that the willow was gently placing in her hands. Around midday, a breeze passed through Willowmere and something changed. The wind, which had felt unsure and unsettled all morning, finally seemed to find its rhythm. It swept the fog away like pulling back a curtain, letting sunlight spill freely over the rooftops. Leaves danced, chimes sang, and somewhere far above, a lark gave a single, spiraling note that hung in the air like spun glass. Lena looked up at the branches above her. They didn't speak in words. They never had. But she understood just the same. The willow remembered. And now, so would she. Night in Willowmere had always been a kind guest. It tiptoed in gently, never in a hurry, never in a rush. Its footsteps soft upon the cobblestones, its breath cool, and comforting as it wrapped the village in twilight's embrace. The lanterns would flicker to life like stars below the stars, and the scent of evening jasmine would drift through the streets, curling around doorways and windowsills like a lullaby made of flowers. But now, night lingered differently. It still arrived on time. It still wore its indigo cloak and brought its basket of stars. But it no longer sang the village to sleep the way it once had. Something in its silence had changed. It felt quieter than quiet, as though it were holding its breath. Lena noticed it in the smallest ways first. The baker, a rotund woman with flour-dusted cheeks and a laugh like thunder in a teacup, had stopped humming while kneading her dough. Instead, she looked out her window more often, her hands moving slower, her eyes lined with tiredness. The postman, who had once whistled tuneless songs as he walked his route, now paused at corners, glancing over his shoulder at nothing at all. He began to forget little things. Names, directions, where he placed his keys. And then there were the children. They were the ones who told Lena first. A little boy named Corwin tugged on her sleeve outside the tea shop. "I don't think I'm really awake," he said, eyes wide and heavy-lidded. "Even when I open my eyes, I feel like I'm still inside my dream. But it's not a fun one." He couldn't explain the dream exactly, just that he floated and floated, but never landed. The wind whispered things in a language he didn't know, that sometimes he dreamed he was someone else. An old woman walking through snow, or a fox with a missing tail, or a shadow with no feet. Another child, Mira, described standing in a hallway of doors, but none of them would open. Behind one door, she said, someone was crying. Behind another, someone was laughing. But the laugh never ended, and it didn't feel happy. Their words weren't frightening in the usual sense. There were no monsters, no darkness, no fear, just a strange sense of being unmoored, as if the world had drifted just a few inches to the left while they were sleeping, and now nothing quite fit. Lena wrote everything down. Her journal, once full of recipes and flowering schedules and moon phases, had become a quiet archive of dreams. Symbols, sensations, little sketches of doors, staircases, moons with too many eyes. And always, the sensation of floating, of being disconnected. She began collecting new herbs, ones she hadn't used in years. Valerian, with its earthy scent like damp roots and sleep-heavy soil. Blue vervain, for dreams and nerves. And a strange herb she found growing in the shadow of the willow, which hadn't grown there before. Its leaves shaped like teardrops. Its scent like rain on stone. She pressed one between the pages of her journal and labeled it simply, "Unknown, found in the hush." Each night, she brewed a different tea, always beneath the willow, always alone. She sipped slowly, eyes closed, listening to the rustle of the branches and the quiet hum of the wind. The tea brought dreams. Yes, but not her own. She began to see fragments from others. Corwin's endless floating, Myra's doors, the baker staring at a silent oven. The postman walks in circles, never arriving. And yet, none of it frightened her. The dreams weren't a warning. They were a message. Disjointed, gentle, and persistent. Like someone knocking softly at a door over and over again. Patient and certain that someone would eventually answer. One evening, as she walked home from visiting the lake, its surface glass still beneath the starlight, she found herself thinking not of the dreams but of lullabies. She couldn't remember the last time she'd heard someone sing one. Not a song from the radio or a hum from a parent trying to soothe a child. A real lullaby, one sung for the earth, or the sky, or for something older and softer than language itself. Perhaps, she thought, something had fallen asleep that shouldn't have. Or perhaps something had woken. Either way, she knew the answer lay beneath the willow. That night, instead of going to bed, she wrapped herself in her shawl, tucked her journal under her arm, and walked beneath the stars back to the tree. She didn't speak. She didn't sit. She simply stood with both hands resting on the bark, her forehead against the trunk, listening. The wind moved through the branches, slow and deliberate, the same rhythm she'd heard for weeks. But now it seemed to shift. It dropped lower, softer, and there, hidden beneath the leaves and the hush, she heard it. A whisper, not of words, but of the song. A lullaby without melody, without lyrics. A feeling, a memory, a call to stillness so deep and vast it felt like sinking into the roots of the world itself. Lena stood very still, and the whisper wrapped around her like a second skin. The willow, she knew, remembered how to dream. And now, it was trying to teach her how to listen. There are certain places in the world that don't appear on maps. They don't need to. They exist just beside the edges of things. Where shadows curve around corners. Where silence pools between words. Where a pause becomes something more. These places aren't seen with eyes or entered with steps. They are remembered or dreamed. And so it was with the dream pathway. Lena first saw it not while sleeping, but while resting. She had been sitting beneath the willow again, wrapped in a shawl woven from old seasons. Frayed edges, the scent of lavender still caught in the threads. A mug of cool tea sat beside her, untouched, its surface reflecting the silver of an early moonrise. The breeze was slow that evening, like a breath held for too long. And then, without warning, the earth beneath her shifted. Not a tremble, not a quake, but something subtler, like a sigh. The grass around the tree bent slightly, not from wind, but from intention. The petals on the ground, thousands of them, lifted gently into the air, swirling like lazy snow in warm light. And in the space where shadow met blossom, where root met soil, a faint line appeared. Not a crack, a trail. It shimmered faintly, not made of light or color, but of something older. Memory, perhaps, or song. It wound beneath the branches of the willow, through the glade, and into the forest beyond. Though Lena had passed that way 100 times and never seen anything like it, she did not question it. She simply rose, brushed the petals from her skirts, and followed. The path did not behave like a path should. It moved, but it didn't lead. It twisted not around trees or rocks, but around moments. Small flickers of time caught in the corners of reality. She passed a stone where a blue jay once sang, and the air still echoed with its call. She stepped over a puddle that shimmered with the reflection of a sun long set, and she paused beneath a branch that hummed a lullaby no one had sung in generations. The farther she walked, the quieter everything became, not silent, but layered, as though she were moving deeper into the sound itself. A place where the rustle of leaves held meaning, where every footstep left an echo that didn't bounce back, but instead drifted softly upward, like smoke. Then, just when the path began to thin and blur, when the shimmer started to dissolve like mist in sunlight, she arrived, not at a place, but at a threshold. It looked, at first, like a clearing, a simple meadow lit by soft starlight, ringed with trees that leaned inward, as though listening. But at the very center stood something impossible. A door, freestanding, rooted in nothing, made of wood that seemed carved from the dream itself, smooth and warm, with veins of silver and deep, pulsing blue. There was no handle, only a small indentation in the shape of a hand. And around the door, growing like ivy over stone, were symbols, spirals, eyes, leaves, waves, moons with too many phases, stars with crooked points, and something that looked like a feather and flame woven together. Lena approached slowly. She didn't feel fear. She felt weightlessness. She pressed her hand into the door's center. It was warm, alive. And then, softly, slowly, the door opened. Not outward, not inward. It opened like a ripple, like a curtain of velvet being drawn aside by invisible hands. What lay beyond was not another place. It was a sensation, warmth, light, the feeling of being wrapped in a story told just for you. The sound of your name is spoken by someone who remembers you from before you were born. The scent of home you've never visited. A memory of belonging so vast. It brought tears to your eyes without sorrow. Lena stepped through. The world didn't disappear. It simply changed. She stood not in a forest, but in a field of stars. Each blade of grass glowing softly. Each stone humming with distant, familiar music. The sky above was not night, but the inside of a thought, filled with drifting lights, floating islands, and gentle winds that carried songs made only of feeling. This, she realized, was not a dream made from sleep. This was a dream made from memory, a place where lost pieces waited to be found. She walked slowly, barefoot in stardust, and listened. Whispers moved around her, not frightening, not urgent, just waiting to be heard. And she knew then what the dreams meant. The floating, the lostness, the voices calling from places just beyond waking. The village was being called here, not pulled against their will, but nudged, gently, insistently, toward remembrance. Something, someone, was trying to bring them back to a truth they had forgotten. A truth hidden in dreams. A truth planted long ago beneath the blossoms of the willow. Lena awoke beneath the willow with the quiet sense that she had never truly left. The stars still watched from above, soft and flickering like drowsy eyes, and the breeze carried the earthy hush of midnight. The grass beneath her was cool with dew, and petals clung to the hem of her skirt like small, sleepy companions. The door, the one of silver-veined dream wood, was no longer visible, but its presence lingered like a scent that couldn't be placed. She did not feel disoriented. She felt complete, as if she had retrieved something important, not with her hands, but with her heart. And at that moment, she knew what she needed to do. That night, instead of going home to sleep, she lit 3 small lanterns and returned to her little tea shop, nestled near the edge of the square. The shop was quiet at night, the way a favorite book waits quietly on a shelf, always ready to be opened. Inside, the wooden floor creaked with familiarity, and the windows framed the moon like a picture in silver. Herbs hung from the ceiling in sleepy bundles. Lavender, mint, rosemary, chamomile. They swayed slightly as she passed, as if nodding hello. Lena moved slowly, with purpose. She selected her ingredients not by recipe, but by instinct. Linden blossoms, for gentleness and the soft unfurling of dreams. Lemon balm, to calm the fluttering edges of the mind. A touch of anise hyssop, for sweetness and memory. And finally, a few crushed petals of the unknown herb, the one found beneath the willow's hush. She boiled water in her oldest kettle, the one with a dent shaped like a falling star. As it warmed, she lit a single beeswax candle and placed it on the center table, where shadows danced as old friends reunited. Then she set out 5 cups. Not 1, not 2, 5. She didn't know exactly who they were for, only that they would be needed. And sure enough, within the hour, there was a soft knock on the shop's front door. It was Mira first, the little girl with eyes full of unanswered dreams. Her hair was tangled from sleep, her slippers mismatched, but her face held the wide-eyed look of someone who couldn't ignore the call. Behind her came Corwin, still holding a stuffed fox by its worn paw, his voice barely above a whisper. I was floating again, but this time I wasn't scared. The baker arrived next, apron still dusted in flour, though she hadn't baked since the dreams began. Her shoulders were heavy, but her eyes, her eyes sparkled like someone remembering a song from long ago. And finally, the postman. He didn't say a word, just removed his cap, held it to his chest, and stepped inside like someone returning to the place where all journeys began. Lena poured the tea in silence. Steam curled into the moonlight like incense, weaving between the guests, wrapping them in warmth and wonder. The scent was soft and layered, like honeyed wind, like pages of an old book turned slowly by invisible hands, like rain before it falls. No one asked what was in it. They simply drank. And as they sipped, something strange and lovely unfolded. The walls of the tea shop seemed to blur at the edges, like a watercolor painting kissed by morning dew. The shelves shimmered faintly, and the lanterns pulsed with a soft glow that kept time with the heartbeat of the night. The candle's flame flickered, and the shadows around it leaned closer. And then, without a word spoken, each of them began to share. Not their dreams, exactly, but the feelings of them. The way the air felt in those dreams. The scents. The colors. The knowing that something was waiting just behind a curtain of sleep. They spoke of floating in doorways and names forgotten but not lost. They spoke of hands reaching gently from the dark, not to grab, but to guide. Lena listened, and when it was her turn, she told them about the willow, about the door, about the stars beneath her feet and the whispers made of light. There's a path, she said softly, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. And it doesn't lead away from here. It leads deeper in. They didn't fully understand. Not yet. But they felt it. The tea had opened something. Not a door, but an invitation. A small, golden thread connecting their hearts to the place just beyond knowing. Outside, the moon rose higher, full and luminous, casting silver across the rooftops and the river beyond. The world outside the shop was quiet, but not asleep. It was listening. As the candle burned lower, Lena stood. She moved to the window and opened it wide. The scent of blossoms drifted in. Somewhere, an owl hooted once, then fell silent. And then, carried on the wind, they all heard it. the faintest hum. Not a voice, not a song, but a memory, shared, ancient, and soft as moss beneath bare feet. Lena turned back to her guests and smiled. "The path is ready," she said, "and we don't have to walk it alone." They finished their tea in silence. Not the silence of emptiness, the silence of something sacred beginning. The morning arrived not with sound, but with a gentle unfolding of light. It came gently, like a sigh through the branches, like a warm blanket slipped over sleeping shoulders. The sky blushed with the softest pinks and golds, and dew clung to every petal and blade, as if the earth itself had dreamed and now awoke tenderly, reluctant to let go of night's embrace. In the tea shop, the candle had long since burned out. Lena sat quietly at the center table, cradling an empty cup, her fingers tracing lazy spirals into the wood grain. The others had dozed off where they sat. Mira curled on a bench, her hand still resting atop her teacup. Corwin nestled under a shawl, his fox toy tucked beneath his chin. The baker leaning peacefully against a stack of flour sacks, and the postman seated upright, chin to chest as if guarding something unseen even in sleep. The shop breathed with them, soft, alive. Outside, the village stirred slowly. Birds tested their songs. The river glittered like it had something kind to say. The scent of baking bread drifted faintly from houses where ovens had long been cold. Something was different, but not loud, not sudden, just warmer, as though the village itself had exhaled a weight it didn't know it was carrying. Lena stepped out into the cool morning air. The cobblestones beneath her feet were damp and dappled with petals blown in from the blossom trees. The willow in the distance swayed gently, as though waving her home. She walked there without hurry. The village around her was waking, but quietly. Curtains drawn back revealed faces blinking at the soft light. Not in confusion, but in wonder. A child reached up toward drifting petals with a smile. An old man paused by his doorstep, holding his mug of tea with both hands as if it might sing. Something had shifted. Something had healed. When Lena reached the willow, she paused beneath its graceful boughs and sat on the earth. The grass felt warmer now. The roots beneath her pulsed with life. Not loud, not urgent, but steady, assured. She placed her hand on the bark. "Thank you," she whispered. Not to the tree, but to everything it represented. To the dream pathway, to the forgotten whispers, to the stories half told and the memories that lived in silence. The willow said nothing in return. It didn't need to, because in the hush that followed, Lena felt it. The dreams had not left the village. They had settled into it, like rain into soil, like breath into lungs. They would return, sometimes at night, sometimes in the quiet moments between. But they would no longer confuse or frighten. They would no longer pull people from their lives, because the path now flowed both ways, from waking into a dream, and from dream back home. She stayed beneath the willow until the sun reached above the rooftops and the birds had finished their second round of songs. When she rose, she did so with a peaceful kind of strength, as though she'd grown roots of her own. Back at the tea shop, her guests were stirring. There was no rush, no panic, only the gentle surprise of realizing one had slept more deeply than usual and dreamed more softly than ever before. Mira opened her eyes first. "The door," she murmured. "I think I saw it too." Lena smiled. "You did." Corwin blinked sleepily. "I think I left something behind." "Or found something," Lena said, pouring a fresh pot of tea. The baker sat up and took a long breath. "I think I'm ready to bake again." And the postman, without a word, tipped his cap, his eyes misty but kind. They drank together once more, not for answers, but for warmth, for remembrance, for the quiet joy of knowing the world was deeper than it seemed, and that they were part of something old and beautiful and true. That night, no dreams pulled anyone away. Instead, they curled through the village like soft threads, woven into lullabies, carried on the wind, tucked into the spaces between footsteps and stars. Lena stood by the window of her shop, lantern glowing beside her, and watched the blossoms fall like snow. And for the first time in many nights, the village truly slept, not to escape, but to rest, to be held, to be gently returned. The days that followed were slow, but in the most comforting way. The village, once again, hummed with quiet rhythms, mornings of dewdrops on cobblestones, afternoons of laughter from children playing by the river, and evenings where the scent of bread, herbs, and fresh tea mingled in the air. It felt as though the very heart of the place had softened, beating in harmony with the earth itself. But something new had begun to bloom, not in gardens or in fields, but in the spaces between moments. The kind of bloom that grows when people feel safe enough to pause, to listen, to remember. Lena returned often to the willow, though the path no longer called to her. It was no longer hidden beneath the surface of dreams. It had become part of her, woven into the quiet corners of her days. Sometimes, in the stillness of dawn, she would sit beneath its boughs and simply breathe. The world would pause with her, as if the very air held its breath, waiting to listen. The villagers, too, began to find their own places of peace. Small gestures, quiet acts, and old rituals revived. The baker hummed softly as she kneaded dough, no longer weighed down by the empty hours. The postman stopped to greet every person he passed, smiling with a kindness that had not been there before. And Corwin, with his toy fox now resting beside his bed instead of in his arms, would sometimes catch Lena's eye as he walked by and smile. A smile that spoke of memories rediscovered. And yet, it was in Mira that the change was most evident. She had always been the dreamer, the child who wandered barefoot through the meadows, whose thoughts drifted to places no one could follow. But now, there was a depth to her gaze, a quiet knowing in her eyes. She would often find Lena by the willow, sitting cross-legged on the grass, her fingers brushing the bark as though in conversation with the tree. Mira, Lena called to her one evening, her voice soft like the breeze. "Would you like to sit with me?" The girl nodded, her feet patting softly against the ground as she joined Lena beneath the tree. The evening sun had just begun to sink beneath the horizon, casting long shadows that danced between the branches, and the air was heavy with the fragrance of jasmine and lilac. "I think the willow is listening to us now," Mira said, her voice thoughtful, as she gazed up at the tree's branches that swayed like hands in the wind. Before, it was just a tree, but now it feels like more. Lena smiled. "It always was more, Mira. We just needed to listen." Myra's eyes sparkled with a mix of curiosity and wonder. "I want to listen. To everything. To the dreams, to the trees, to the stars." Lena placed a hand gently on her shoulder, the soft warmth of connection passing between them. "You already do. You always have." As the two sat in silence, the air grew cooler, and the stars slowly began to reveal themselves. Soft pinpricks of light scattered across the velvet sky. There was no rush, no need for words. The willow, standing like an ancient sentinel, whispered softly in the wind. Its branches moved as if to gather the fragments of dreams from the night air and weave them into something new, something comforting. And beneath it, time seemed to bend in a way that was gentle and kind. There was no urgency to the passing hours, no feeling of being pulled forward or pushed back. Only the present, the moment wrapped in the moonlight and the soft hum of night. Lena stood slowly, brushing her skirt free of the grass. "It's time for bed," she said, her voice a quiet invitation to the peace that lay just ahead. "But tomorrow we will wake and we will listen again." Mira stood as well, her hands clasped in front of her. "I think I'm ready to go home now," she said softly, but with a calm certainty, as though she had found her place among the stars. Together, they walked back toward the village, their footsteps in time with the whisper of the willow behind them. The world around them was still. The sky, the stars, the trees, all held in a tender quiet that felt like the softest lullaby. When they reached the edge of the village, Lena turned and looked back toward the willow, now a silhouette against the night sky. She could feel the connection, the pull of something larger, deeper. The tree had not just been a place of dreams. It had been a reminder of home, of roots, of the quiet magic that exists in the spaces between moments. The village had found its rhythm again, not just in waking, but in the soft dance of night and day. And Lena knew, as she stood there, that the path of dreams had not left them. It had simply become woven into the fabric of the village itself. And every time the breeze stirred the willow's leaves, it would speak of memories held, of stories shared, of dreams yet to be discovered. As she walked back toward her little shop, Lena paused and looked up at the moon. It hung like a delicate pearl in the sky, casting silver light over the earth. And she felt the weight of something timeless, something soft, something eternal. And as the night wrapped itself gently around the village, she whispered, almost to herself, "We are here. We are home."